Good morning, everyone.
Good
Good
morning,
morning,
Rabbi.
Rabbi.
We're in Mishna Beitza, Perek Beis, chapter 2, Mishnah Vav, Mishnah 6. Shloisha Devarim. There were three matters regarding Yontif. Rabbi Gamliel Machmer Kediv Beis Shammai, where the sage Rabbi Gamliel was stringent as he followed the opinion of Beis Shammai. The Rabbi Gamliel was a descendant of Hillel. Nonetheless, when it came to these things, he personally followed the opinion of Beis Shammai. The first thing is one cannot insulate hot food from Yontif to Shabbos. Okay, so we need a couple of introductions here. So here we go. The rabbis prohibited insulating a pot of hot water or hot food on Shabbos.
Mm-hmm.
For example, by wrapping it in wool. You cannot do that on Shabbos. Okay, now insulating, which the Mishnah calls hatmana, is forbidden even on Yontif if the water will not be used on Yontif. Similarly, if Yontif falls on a Friday, we may not even insulate food on Yontif for that Shabbos, just as other acts of food preparation are prohibited on Yontif for Shabbos without an Erev Tavshilin. All right, so that's all Pashat. That's all the basics.
Mm-hmm.
You may not do hatmana on Shabbos. You may not do hatmana on Yontif for water that you don't for the food that you don't need. If Yontif falls on Friday, you cannot insulate food from Yontif for Shabbos if you don't make an Erev Tavshilin.
Mm-hmm.
That's everybody agrees. Beis Shammai take this a step further. They forbid insulating food on Yontif for Shabbos, even if an Erev Tavshilin had been made. Get that? Even if an Erev Tavshilin was made, according to Beis Shammai, you cannot insulate food on Yontif for Shabbos. Why? An Erev Tavshilin allows only acts of food preparation that are similar to the ones done to make the Erev itself. Again, according to Beis Shammai. For example, if someone cooked food for the Erev, may only cook food on Yontif for Shabbos, not bake bread and the like. And if someone baked bread for the Erev, he may only bake on Yontif for Shabbos, but not cook. So according to Beis Shammai, whatever it is that you do for the Erev Tavshilin on Friday, that is what you can do. I'm sorry, whatever you did the Erev Tavshilin for, right, on Friday, that is what you're allowed to do in your preparation from Yontif to Shabbos.
Mm-hmm.
Whatever you did in the Erev Tavshilin on Erev Yontif, that is what you can do on Yontif for Shabbos. What you didn't do, you can't do. Therefore, if the Erev Tavshilin did not include insulating food, Beis Shammai prohibited insulating hot food or water on Yontif for Shabbos. They permit a person to insulate food on Yontif for Shabbos only if he had insulated food for the Erev. If you insulated food Erev Yontif for the Erev, then you'd be able to hatmana insulate from Yontif to Shabbos. But otherwise not. According to Beis Shammai, even for your Erev Tavshilin, whatever it is that you did in the Erev Tavshilin before Yontif, that is what you can do on Yontif for Shabbos and not more. That's Beis Shammai's opinion. That is something Rabbi Gamliel followed. Beis Hillel, on the other hand, rule that even if someone only cooked for the Erev, we do any active food preparation on Yontif for Shabbos, including insulating. You make your Erev, whatever it takes to make the Erev. Once the Erev is done, then you can do all the other things that you need to do from Yontif for Shabbos. Okay, that's the first thing.
Mm-hmm.
You may not reassemble the parts of a menorah. They call that here a candlestick or a candelabra on Yontif. Why? Because that resembles the malacha of building, which is prohibited on Yontif. Now, again, this needs some background. Beis Shammai hold that the malacha of building applies not only to buildings, i.e. structures attached to the ground, but also to objects not attached to the ground. That is the principle of binyan b'kelim. There is the concept, the malacha of the prohibited activity of building applies not only to structures, many things connected to the ground, but even to kelim, even to utensils. Now, putting back together the pieces of a candlestick, which resembles building, we'll explain in a second why it resembles building, is that forbidden on the Shabbos and Yontif. It is not actual building because this type of candlestick is made to be taken apart and reassembled. So it's not baina, not actual baina. It's not something permanent. However, it does resemble baina, and therefore, Beis Shammai say there's a rabbinic prohibition to reassemble the candlestick on Yontif. And the only way it would be possible to have such a rabbinic prohibition is if you hold Yesh Baina B'Kalim, that the Malacha of Baina applies by utensils. Beis Hillel hold that the Malacha building does not apply to utensils. Their opinion then, one may reassemble a candlestick on Yontif, provided that the parts can be inserted without force. Separate issue. But the point is that just reassembling it is not going to resemble a building, because there's no Binyan Mekalim, the Malacha Baina does not apply by utensils. Okay, so that's the second example. The third example of where Beis Shammai was stringent, where Gamliel was stringent like Beis Shammai, is Vein Oifen Pitin Geritzin El Rikikin. Now, the literal translation of these words are: one may not bake thick bread, but may bake thin bread, which really means a lot or a little. It's not a question of what kind of bread it is. It's a matter is how large a dough. The reason that basically, if you bake these thicker loaves, you would typically need a much larger dough, and that's the issue here. Here, the issue here is not so, or actually, I shouldn't say that. If you bake numerous loaves, you bake many loaves, then you need a thick dough. If you bake not so many, you bake a few amount. You bake less amount. You bake fewer breads, then you need less amount of dough. So here's the issue. According to Beis Shammai, the problem is that when you are going ahead and baking a lot of breads, you need to there's a lot of effort involved in that. And the thing is that we're talking about baking here bread on Yontif, where there are going to be more loaves than needed on Yontif for Yontif itself. There's going to be, meaning basically you're building. We're calling it thick. We're calling it the thick breads. It means you're making a large dough. If you're making a large dough, you're making many loaves. Making many loaves, that's going to mean that you're making loaves more than what you need for Yontif itself. So Beis Shammai say you can't do that. That makes a lot of sense, right? You're not supposed to do malacha on Yontif for what you don't need on Yontif. However, Beis Shammai say, but that's Beis Shammai's opinion. Beis Hillel say you may. Why may you? So explaining is, according to Beis Hillel, though, we may bake numerous loaves at one time, even if more bread than necessary will be produced. The reason is that filling the oven with many loaves leaves less empty space in the oven, which causes the heat to be more concentrated, which in turn causes the necessary loaves to bake better. The point is that you can't just go in and bake extra loaves, but the point is that by putting in more loaves into the oven, the loaves that you need will bake better. Okay, it will bake better, and therefore that's why you can make these. You can make many loaves, because the many loaves help the few loaves that you need. And therefore, so Beis Shammai say, no, that's not enough of a reason to be able to do it. Beis Hillel say, yes, it is. All right, so these are the three things in which Rabbi Gamliel was stringent like Beis Shammai. Now the Mishnah continues, Amar Rabbi Gamliel. Rabbi Gamliel said, to support what he said for the last example, in my father's house, his father was Rabbi Shimon ben Gamliel. Shimon ben Gamliel, they call him here Shimon ben Gamliel the first, the great grandson of Hillel. Hillel's son Gamliel, Shimon ben Gamliel. So this Rabbi Gamliel, who was the great grandson of Hillel, he said that in my father's house, they did not bake large loaves, only thin loaves, meaning they didn't bake more loaves than necessary. Mm-hmm. So he was saying, look, this is what my father did. They said to him, what shall we do with the practice of your father's house? They were stringent with themselves. It was a personal stringency that they kept. But they allowed all the rest of the Jewish people to bake loaves that were either to bake thick or numerous loaves, and even now he says chayri. What's chayri? Chayri they explained as coal-baked bread. Coal-baked bread requires a lot of effort. Now they explain here, coal-baked loaves were large doughs baked directly on coals. To bake them properly, one had to make a very large pile of burning coals. Despite this, the additional effort required, besides the fact that it was a lot of bread, there was a lot of effort in putting these coals together. Gamliel's father permitted others to bake such bread on Yontif. And for the same reason as we said before, The more bread's in the oven, the better everything bakes. Although the members of his own household refrained from doing so, that does not indicate the halacha, because in this matter they committed themselves personally to go beyond the requirements of the law. So basically, Rabbi Gamliel said, "This is what we did by my father," and they said to him, "That practice by your father was a personal stringency, not a stringency to others, because to others they would allow them to make the thick breads, meaning to make many loaves, and even if it entailed a lot of extra work because it was cold baked." Have a wonderful day. Have a wonderful Yom Tov.
You might have more guests.
Thank you, Rabbi.
You might have more guests if you don't have any.